By the suggestion of some and against that of some others, here are some Western European country city recommendations to avoid, seek, or try something nearby and instead of. In Austria, instead of Linz, Hitler's favorite town, you might try Lienz in the southern Alps. I'm not really fond of Innsbruck. And on the other hand, Mariazell in the mountains, a train ride from St. Polten, is probably the most beautiful you will see in Austria. In Belgium, instead of Bruges, Brugge, you might try Lier, just east of Antwerp. Just as pretty, no tourists. Don't confuse that with Liers, just north of Liège, which I'm not too fond of. And on the other hand, you might try Mons, called Bergen in the Flemish version, and it's a happy little town in the southwest of Belgium. In Denmark, instead of Aarhus, the second largest city, you might go further to Frederikshavn. Near Copenhagen is Hillerød, which is a beautiful castle area, and I would avoid Sonderburg, which was a tourist trap near the German border off the main railroad track. In England, most people recommend avoiding Birmingham for so many reasons. Instead of Brighton, which really gives the meaning, the word hooligan, a brand new meaning, you might try instead Bournemouth. And in the northwest is Blackpool, not to be confused with Poole, which is near Portsmouth. And Blackpool is probably the most English of English cities. In France, an adorable town in the Massif Central near Mont d'Or is La Bourboule. Another town that's just so very French is Angoulême, which is a little bit northeast of Bordeaux, which some have called Bordeaux. Instead of Bordeaux, I would suggest Nantes, the fifth largest city in France. Likewise, instead of Biarritz, I would suggest Saint-Jean-de-Luz, just immediately south. The ones to avoid, I have to admit, are Saint-Tropez and Marseille. In the north of Germany is a happy little town called Husum, and instead of Lübeck, I would suggest the nearby Wismar. To be avoided for so many reasons is Bremen, and I have yet to meet anybody except someone who lives there who likes Dusseldorf. Instead of Salzburg, I know it's Austria, but it's right on the border, is another choice, Würzburg, which also has a Mozart festival, and Mozart preferred, and I think is actually a prettier town with better nightlife. And in the south of Germany, as we approach Bavaria, is a wonderful hidden little town, Wertheim. In Finland, probably the most fun can be had in Tampere, a university town. Turku, which while being diverting still is a port city, I would suggest instead Pori, which has among other things a jazz festival, and in the south spelled Hanku but pronounced Hangu, I would avoid. In the Irish Republic, the town to avoid for so many reasons is Cork. And instead of Galway on the west, I might suggest Sligo on the northwest. And Limerick, while being a bit obvious in its tourist manifestations, turned out to be still lots of fun. In Italy, instead of staying in Venice, which has no nightlife, you can stay in nearby Padova. Likewise, Turin, most people will agree, has no nightlife. And Naples has its continuing difficulties. Instead of Pisa, south of the Cinque Terre, you might consider staying in Rapallo, just a little bit north. By the way, a nice, beautiful town just north of Rome in the mountains, a favorite of the old-timey popes, was Viterbo. And in Sicily, let's not forget, Catania is worth a visit. In the Netherlands, instead of Amsterdam, which has been cracking down on almost anything that's sinfully fun, I would suggest instead Delft. And just as pretty, lots of canals, no tourists. Near the Belgian border is Roosendaal, a switching point which should be avoided at all costs. On the other hand, in the northeast corner is Groningen. Beautiful town with beautiful buildings, beautiful lake, and a spirited nightlife. In Norway, instead of the proverbial Bergen, you might try Stavanger. Both beautiful train rides. I'm not too fond of Skane or Larvik. Those are harbor cities. And instead, I would highly recommend Nordoten, which is a train stop just off of Drummond, west of Oslo. In Sweden, Örebro is a wonderfully diverting town. And instead of Stockholm, I might recommend instead the university town of Göteborg. And almost everybody agrees, let's avoid Malmö. In Portugal, avoid the town of Tunis, which is a switching town between Faro and Lagos. Instead of Cascais, a sleepy, dull, boring beach city west of Lisbon, I highly recommend Coimbra, university town. In the mountains, Mirandela, and in fact any of the towns along the main river up from Porto. In Spain, highly recommended is my favorite, Vigo in Galicia. To avoid at all costs is Benidorm, a skyscraper resort town, and that's it. Instead of Barcelona's beach towns to the north, Blanes, etc., I suggest Sitges, just 20 minutes south of Barcelona. In Scotland, let's avoid Glasgow. The only thing going for it there is the TARDIS from Doctor Who, and even that's an artificial tourist trap. Highly recommended is a trip up to Oban in the northwest, and instead of Dundee, you might consider a visit to Perth. In Switzerland, most people agree to avoid Geneva, which seems its sole claim to fame is a dead League of Nations and a jet of water called the Jet of Water. Instead of Locarno, a kind of touristy harbor town in the southern part of Switzerland, let's go over the hill to Lugano. Lot more fun, lot more character. Also a fun town, just on its own merits, is St. Gallen, university town in the northeast.